This is episode Wigan are champions of the Super League pod, where we recap not one, but two grand finals that end with cherry and white ribbons on the cup. We make it a special three-way show and find out a few things as we ask. Should you book ahead at your favourite vegan eatery? And could Tim be wearing any more clothes? As we lunge ahead into your reviews of the big finale to the 2018 domestic season, Swinton versus Workington, and the two Manchester Showpiece finals. Get strapped in, kids. It's SLP time. Hello listeners, welcome along to episode 203 of the Super League pod, what will also be known as the Wigan are champions again episode of Super League pod. I am Mark, your normal host and Wigan fan, so I am still beaming with the joys of a historic treble for the Wigan club this year, and a beautiful double that rounded that off on Saturday afternoon and evening, with my side winning the women's and men's grand finals in Manchester. Two men who were there to witness both occasions as well are Alan Cale and Tim Griffiths. Welcome along to the three-way that we're pulling off for the grand final recap show. How are you both doing? We'll start with Alan.
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Yeah, we're just here to try to provide a little bit of balance, and just cut Mark off if he gets a bit too eulogising about stuff. So we'll try between us.
Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah, I'm good. I had a lovely weekend up in Manchester. Very relaxing up until the journey home, but. Yeah, really good, and more of that probably when we get to SLP Recommends.
Well, your journey home was on the Sunday, but let me tell you, my journey home on the Saturday night was no picnic either. I
thought you were getting a chauffeur-driven service.
Well, my cousin, whose car I came back in, had parked in the worst place to park to go where we needed to go, and the traffic was an absolute nightmare on top of that because of the road closures for the half marathon, and bonkers. But the day before that was really good. Obviously, we all met up around about lunchtime-ish. Me and Tim met up in Piccadilly Station. We got on a tram with my little brother Matt.
My first time on a Manchester tram.
Yeah. How did you find the Manchester trams?
It was good. I didn't enjoy it as much as the Croydon tram, because the Croydon ones you can pretend to drive. You go and sit at the front, see.
I think you can on some of the Manchester ones, but maybe not the ones we were on. But we then were walking into the regional arena, or we were blown into the regional arena past the women's team for the grand final, both arriving, and I was pretty much mid-sentence of saying, we'll have to find somewhere and then tell Alan where we are, and then I saw this bright orange coat, and and then I was like, oh, there he is, right next to us.
There I am, yeah.
And then we managed to get ourselves positioned right in the middle of the Lee Miners Rangers hardcore.
Well, there was the first game, the championship final. There was two sets of hardcore fans from the amateur scene, wasn't there? Stanley, who are black and white and fucking dynamite, and
as they kept saying,
yeah, and Lee Miners, who were really encouraging any player at all to break something from the opposition side and cheering at injuries. So it was a different one. It was a different level of intensity from the fan bases. Whilst we were there, we also came across other members of the SLP wider family. So, Tim, take us through how we were aware of the biggest contingent of our group who were headed over from West Yorkshire arriving.
Yep. So the West Yorkshire Express arrived and crashed into town, so much so that it needed a security escort. So the first thing we see is a steward leading out someone pushing a wheelchair, and you just look up and you knew without even seeing. And then lo and behold, just trailing behind was the Cass van, and lo and behold, it was Fatboy Rob and Dom Hodgson and family.
Yeah, Heather and Scarlett were in tow, and Grandad John, the granddad of the the real elder statesman of the SLP family.
I think can we call him the granddad of the pod granddad? Are we allowed to call him that?
I mean, we have John as well, don't we? The other
This
John,
is true. Yeah.
who's granddad, but I'd say John Scotter, Joshua's granddad, wouldn't mind this because he's certainly not 80 years old like John Hodgson is. But yeah, so those guys were in town. We had Lee Whitnell popped up to say hello.
Yeah.
The Warrington fan who's hosted the show a couple of times. He was there with a friend. I thought his mate was barking up the wrong tree for most of the half-time interval. When I was chatting to Lee, he was chatting to the lass next to her, and I was like, he's not for her, as it were. And I think they were just talking about the entertainment on the pitch, though. Then we had the villain of the day. Is that about now? Yes, I think we should talk about the person who caused the most grief during the occasion. Yeah, it was one certain mascot, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Ronnie the Rhino, everybody, or Ronnie the Ring Piece, depending on who you ask. Ronnie the Rhino upset a child and made a child cry before somebody else upset a child and nearly made a child cry. Who was that, Mark?
I didn't make her cry.
No, she didn't cry with you, but she seemed quite upset.
No, she's my mate. No bother. No harm done. But basically,
by the end of the day, her and Ronnie were friends, and her and you weren't. So I think Ronnie probably won that one.
That was more because her dad was not satisfied with the way the outcome of the match went, and wasn't happy to let Scarlett celebrate the joy of rugby league with me with some high fives. So then I had to be called Stinky Mark instead, which did not seem like a fair way for the afternoon to have gone. But Ronnie the Rhino stole young Scarlett, who, to put everyone in the picture, is only 2 years old, stole her hat to put on his horn, and great tears followed. Yeah, but then the women's grand final followed, which we'll talk about later on. We'll talk about all the wind and all of that. And then we got on a tram, didn't we? And
eventually we got on a tram. No thanks to your brother's directional skills.
Well, it already made us miss trams earlier in the day by having to get cash out. Cash that I realised when we got home that he didn't really have to get out because I had to pay for him the next day at the Swinton game. Then we kind of took a wrong turn out of the stadium, going to the Holt Town stop rather than the Etihad campus stop,
which would have been fine.
Avoid having to go through a steward's escort across the pitch, and I thought we would have avoided pushing Grandad up the hill to go back down the hill at the Etihad campus tram stop, but no, in fact, we found another hill to go down and up unnecessarily, and
a bunch of randoms as well who went into an off licence that looked distinctly unsalubrious.
Yeah, definitely an unlicensed off license. I'd call it an unlicensed rather than an off license. But we then got on the trams, didn't we? And we kind of got on a tram when it was pretty empty, and we sort of stood at four corners around the opening. And I mean, then we just kept getting interrupted by more and more Warrington fans getting in between us all as we were still continuing a conversation on through the whole of Manchester City Centre.
One particular Warrington fan who seemed to want to get to know us all. She seemed very, very keen.
Yes, she was very chatty. She was very confident. Before the game, like all the Warrington fans were, apart from the one who kept wanting to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers season rather than talk about the grand final, which was an odd one on me. But you know what? They were all great characters that we met along the way. The York fan as well, that my brother made best friends with, who I hope is listening to the podcast, because he was giving the hard sell on the Super League part.
He knew who we were, yeah.
And then the bit we're missing, Tim, from the tram is when we saw Alan walking down the street after getting some vegan food. Alan, how was your bit in between the women's final and the men's final?
Well, I was just going to say, because I went a little bit before you to try and get some vegan stuff, which was partially successful.
The way you said that was like it was some sort of underground euphemism.
Yeah, get some vegan stuff. My usual place in the Northern Quarter was fully booked. But anyway, yeah. So I actually ran into Lee on the tram. So Lee and I were talking on the tram with his mate. So we had another little meet up then. I think I saw Bry on our tram as well. I think he was got on at the other end, but anyway.
Oh, well, Brian Davies is another 6 hours into Tim's story.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll leave you to finish up with Brian then. But yeah, so I went into town, and the place I wanted to go to was fully booked. So I ended up kind of slumming it, just grabbing something, and then. So where did you see me then? I'm wondering where I was.
It was between Piccadilly Gardens and the library. You were just walking down the street. We couldn't miss you. You were wearing a bright orange coat.
Yeah, well, see, this is the thing. You can see me on all the pictures on the from the women's game and stuff like that. I'm very noticeable in that jacket.
I'm thinking you can probably hear me as well, because I was one of the few people trying to make an atmosphere during the women's final. But so then we got to the ground.
I hope they heard my shout just before the presentation party. Yeah.
To Ralph, yeah.
Yeah, Ralph out. And he did look round, and he definitely saw us.
And laughed. He was in good spirits.
He thought it was a joke. I'm glad one of us did.
I mean, obviously, the way the man dresses is getting paid enough to buy yachts to fanny around on in the Med, so that's a bit of a disturbance.
Well, we also, at this point, must mention next season's Carl Ablett, who was handing out the trophy in the championship game. And was dressed wearing one of Nigel Wood's old suits as well, which clearly didn't fit him.
Then we got to we got to Old Trafford, and we went to. Do we call it a fan park, or do we call it a ball ache to get to a bar with not much going on?
I think. Well, and don't forget, minor bit of racism from Alex Simmons while we're in the queue as well.
You're gonna have to fill in the gap.
You're gonna have to elaborate on that.
Yeah, he referenced John Bateman as I think the polite term would be looking as if he were a member of a traveller community.
Well, he called him a bit of a pikey or something along those lines, I think. And then it was Paul Wood who veered it towards traveller community. That's maybe a more PC phrase. But yeah, that was whilst we queued up to go in. Then we got in and we ran into...
And it was the most daft system, because it was like Disney World. It was like go to a pen to get in a queue, to get in a pen, to get in a queue where nobody really needed to queue for.
Exactly. It was just in case anything really kicked off in there. Of course, the only people who were kicking off were the people who'd bought a pint, gone for a piss, and then couldn't get back in because of the over-efficient stewarding that was occurring in the in inverted commas fan zone. But Fatboy Rob had brought a Sale rugby union fan to the game. James. It was nice to meet him, and he was experiencing his first ever live rugby league. We got a fan review from him that we'll talk about later on. And he had a very impressive beard as well. I think, we look over some of the beards we've seen in the SLP world. You talk about your Dave Cantrells and your Phil Nadins and your Langers, and this guy, James, probably topped them all in terms of length. I would think it's something for Dave Cantrell to aspire to over the off season. I think
I should win best newcomer, because mine's only a year old now.
And then Chris McEwen managed to find a way through this weird steward. He just ambled in, completely hungover from the night he'd had before.
We've been queuing for a good 20 minutes, half an hour to get through this, and we got through the barrier at 2 minutes before the time we'd set ourselves as the cut-off, when we couldn't be asked any more time.
Yeah, and then we stood there halfway through our beers, and like a really hungover Chris McEwen just rolls up behind us. He was very quiet. He was still recovering, I think, from his exploits around his friends in Liverpool the night before. And then it was fantastic to see Aaron Smith and a couple of the other sort of North London, Brentwood, Essex massive hitting us up for a bit of a chat. That was awesome. That was unexpected as well, which is even more delightful, I would have to say. So yeah, that kind of rounded off my listener meetups for the day. But Tim, after the game, we'll talk about the game in just a second. But after the game,
let's pause on this a second. So then we had the joy of getting into the stadium, and I had the most comedy moment, which I wish someone was filming.